You are listening to the Co-Creator Network. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Spread the word, it's time for the Dr. Robert Show. Join him today with his guests as they explore current hot topics about healthy living as food for thought. And what do the stars say? A look at how you and today's events are influenced by the cosmos. I Want to Believe, with thought-provoking prophecies about UFOs, star visitors, disclosure, and the 2012 awakening. Each week, new topics on relationships, conscious business, science, and technology all bring better understanding to our daily pursuits. Education will determine how our kids think in the future, and we will examine provocative new ideas in art, music, and dance as well. And now, it's time for Dr. Robert.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's show, or this week's show actually. Thank you so much for joining us. As usual, I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to be a part of the Co-Creator Network radio experience here on the Dr. Robert Show. It's always such a good thing, you know, and I appreciate and value each and every one of you for, listening every week to the show. We've been doing this now since, I guess, last October, November, and we've gotten a lot of exciting, reports from you that you're enjoying the show. It gives you, information about the week and, how to look at yourself in terms of perhaps what the numbers say or how you're showing up in your star map with astrology, and occasionally a good recipe shows up, or definitely information about nutrition and the value of taking care of ourselves. We've introduced you several different astrologers and had many guests on the show to enlighten and share their information about their truth and how they perceive the world to be. We're in an extraordinary vibration now, and as we move more and more into what has already become the shift, I call it the golden age of the divine feminine, we're really beginning to become more alert, a little bit more crisp and clear about how we perceive who we are and what we're doing. And it's really quite extraordinary. It's such an honor to be a part of the Great Awakening happening here on Gaia, Mother Earth, our home. And I'd love to hear more about it from you. Be sure that you email me at drdp@robertpeace.net or info@robertpeace.net, whichever one is easier for you to connect to me with. And of course, our other co-hosts would love to hear from you as well. You can connect with us on Facebook at the Dr. Robert Show. Yeah, I just put that site up. As you know the Robert Peace site, Dr. Robert Peace site, but this is a new site for information directly for the show, and I'm working on a new website for the show that'll give you coming events and, everything else that we're planning throughout the year, some contests, some things to do. So that should be a lot of fun. It's wonderful growing this experience with you and being a part of it. I love you. I love you for being a part of my experience, and I hope you're enjoying me being a part of yours as well. Well, on today's show, we have, of course, Bobby Marchesso to talk about all things planetary in terms of starships and starseeding and UFOs and reports from up-and-coming, information that we want to be aware of. That some of it we can get on YouTube and some of it we can find on the net, but he's really great at sort of pinpointing that information in for us. And there's always something delightful about Bobby and his report. And of course, Renee Baribeau, she's always in a great discussion about food and how our consciousness and our awareness around food and how it supports us or how it can actually cause harm. And that's always a great conversation. We're always fascinated by how much we can improve our health and, feed our mind with what we eat. And of course, we've got Joseph Anthony, giving us extraordinary reports on astrology for the week, what's really going on, how we can pinpoint the highs and lows of whatever is happening in our life at any given moment. And that's kind of a really great thing to know, sort of a map of how we're going about our week. And he shares that beautifully with us. And then Our newest segment host, of course, is Barbara St. John. She's a grief specialist, really reporting on the different aspects of understanding grief and post-traumatic stress syndrome, depression, the things that we deal with when loved ones are passing or have parted. And of course, we're living in a time of the baby boomer. We're aging. There's 40 million Americans alone in the baby boomer generation. And globally, it's over 200 million people that are getting older. I mean, we're just getting older, and there's a lot of transitioning. And we're at a place now of wanting to support even the younger kids to understanding how best to deal with when we go, something that maybe our parents and grandparents didn't do so well for us. So she'll give continued reports on that. Normally, I can usually have a guest on the show. I don't this week. I thought that I would give a report about information about some numerology, some symbolic gesture that's going on in the universe this week to help support you even deeper and deeper into your understanding and figuring out the parts of you that you think are broken, and so that you can let go and transform those into love. So without further ado, let's get this show started. And once again on this segment of the show is my good friend Bobby Marchesso, our resident ufologist. You can find out more about Bobby at www.bobbymarchesso.com. Hi, my friend. How you doing today?
Wonderfully well. How are you?
Well, I don't know if I'm wonderfully well, but I'm pretty fabulous.
Well, you should try it. I tell you what, let's switch. I'll be fabulous, and you can just be wonderfully well. Let me know how it goes for you.
Okay, I will. By the end of the time we have together today, I'll let you know. What's up today?
Last week we were talking about, remember the whole thing about Russell Crowe, and he hoaxed his UFOs and things like that. This isn't another hoaxing thing, but another celebrity that's hugely involved in UFOs is Dan Aykroyd. I don't know if you knew that or had heard about his fascination. He has a wonderful, and I'm being serious about this, he's got a really great documentary that's called Dan Aykroyd, Unplugged on UFOs. I watched my version on YouTube, and a few hours worth of him talking about UFOs. Somebody's interviewing him, and Dan is just kind of being real plain and talking about what he believes he knows, much like what we do on this show, right? He doesn't make things up. It's just, well, here's how I've understood it, and some of the research that he's done. How he looks at some of the controversy around Area 51 and that type of thing. Very, very fascinating. Highly recommend it. Again, it's called Dan Aykroyd, Unplugged on UFOs. You can totally YouTube that and find out more about it. But the reason why we're bringing it up today is because he may have a new movie coming out in the works, a documentary type stuff, an alien abduction movie. If you remember, one of the first abductees was Barney and Betty Hill. I don't know if you're very familiar with that story or not. A couple who were driving home one night and discovered that there was a UFO that shined down on their car. The importance that they took all these notes and tapes, other items had been placed in this collection of all this evidence that, according to them, this was, you got to figure, this was back in 1961. It's about 10:30 at night. They're driving back from vacation in Niagara Falls. A few other cars on the road, as you can imagine, right? And Betty thought she was looking at a falling star, but it was moving upward, more like it was a plane or some type of a satellite. And then it just kept getting bigger and brighter, and Betty was urging Barney to stop at the car. And they finally stopped at this scenic picnic area, and that's when Barney went back and grabbed a pistol out of the car because they didn't know what was going on. But through this binoculars, they were observing this odd-shaped craft. Well, as it turns out, again, they claim that they just continued driving on down this road, but what it ended up happening is that they were missing time. This huge craft was moving above them about 80 to 100 feet, and they say, again, that they witnessed about 8 to 11 humanoid figures that were peering out of the craft's window. It's a very fascinating story. And they revealed a lot of this as well on hypnosis. They were the hypnosis regression, excuse me, because they couldn't remember a lot of it. So they were regressed, and then a lot of this came out. You can hear actual recordings. Again, I would go to YouTube or just Google Betty and Barney Hill and listen to some of their sessions and their tapes, but they were just hysterical, and found out they actually had been taken and they were not operated on, but yeah, I mean, probed and prodded and all of that kind of stuff. So automatically, this raised a lot of controversy. Unfortunately, there's no, I agree with being politically correct, but I also about being real. They're a black and white couple. And back, of course, in the early 60s, this was not as greatly looked upon. And they got a lot of flack for that, and unfortunate wise. I really resonate a lot with their story, their how they put things together. Betty had come up with a complete star system where she said that these people told her they were from, and she had drawn on the paper what they had shown her, this map. She looked over and there was a map on there on like, I guess, a wall, that was hanging up, and they pointed to it and said, that's where we're from. And she drew this on a piece of paper. The only thing is, that particular section of stars, years later, they finally discovered. And they took it back and said, this matches up completely with Betty said. So how do you, things like that, how do you explain how she knew this star system was there when it hadn't even been discovered yet? But again, Aykroyd speaking, publicly about his UFOs. Everybody knows he's kind of into it. And they asked him about his beliefs, and he said they're here. Science should accept that they're here, and look at how they've come from 1 billion years in the future or the next dimension or wherever they're from, but they have abducted people. And so with Dan Aykroyd's belief in the extraterrestrial abductions, fascination with the Hill abduction especially, confirmation should be coming soon of his involvement in a movie about Betty and Barney Hill coming up in the near future. I would look forward to that. I really like Dan Aykroyd, and again, his down-to-earth approach. If you just, here's one of the two things you can do. Again, Dan Aykroyd, UFOs. Just type that in, simple enough, right? If you want to talk about, see what he's talking about, this upcoming film or such, Dan Aykroyd, alien abduction movie. Just type that in. All this stuff is really easy to find. Again, this isn't just stuff I find for the show. These are things of when I'm looking around. This is where I go to, and that's how I've discovered it. So they're really easy, and I like to bring in the audience so that you can kind of know what we're talking about. You know what I mean? And tell you what's been very helpful for me in trying to discern, are they here or aren't they? This is just one of those great things. So let's move on. The Phoenix Lights, if you remember, the lights in Phoenix, which also we talked about last week. We talked about black triangles. I can't even remember what they called them now. Some really fancy name for swamp gas. But the Phoenix Lights, of course, was a triangle type. 16 years, still no answers. Why is that news? I don't know. I thought I'd tell you that we've had this still unsolved. They just haven't come up with, what a possible explanation is. So much of this video, so many of the people who tried to explain it away before, including the current mayor was trying to explain it away, said it wasn't what everybody thought it was. And then later, of course, he comes out in his documentary and said he was lying. He's had experiences himself. The guy looked like a complete ass on television, talking about the Phoenix Lights, only to come out later and say, actually, I do believe, and here's my circumstances. But here's the official word, because there's never been a full formal investigation properly funded that has been headed up by experienced researchers and staffed. The task was trying to determine the origin, the method, the motive presenting for the city. They just seem, all of this whole investigation seems just to defy gravity and physics as we know it. These large silent objects, they're talking about there's 8 different. And so because there's not been a formal investigation, everybody's just kind of including that there's just it was a massive UFO. There hasn't been a reasonable explanation is. I mean, they talked about flares, they talked about all this stuff. I've been to Phoenix several times and tried to, go where that was, but so many people I think are trying to move past it, especially the people in Phoenix. It was what it was. People swept it under the rug. There was no formal investigation. It was just a military exercise in flares, and they just has kind of just left it at that. So again, if you're interested, if you don't know a lot about the Phoenix Lights, that's what they're formally called, and you can look up some of the information for yourself on what that may have been. But that's a long time ago. Like I say, it's been 16 years now, and I know for some UFO people it's still fairly prevalent, but I think Phoenix would just like to see it go away. There you are, Robert.
They want it all to go away. I mean, they don't want us to be part of the information. We haven't come to a time of full disclosure yet, and as long as like all news, it's here today and gone tomorrow, then people move on to the next, information field. They're not really remembering much. They're wanting us not to dwell on it. So
right.
It's an interesting process, and that's why we're here. That's why I have, you as a host on the show, because I want you to keep reminding people that there's more going on out there than we know about.
Exactly. Very well put.
Thank you so much, Bobby Marchesso, for joining us today. Again, Bobby Marchesso, thank you for joining us, and we will see you on the wave. Have a great week.
All right. Take care. Bye.
And once again on this segment of the show is my good friend Renee Baribeau, our practical shaman chef. You can learn more about Renee at www.thepracticalshaman.com. Hi, Renee. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm really, really good. It's spring. Yay.
Yay. Time to get out there and prune ourselves and prune our yards.
And prune our life. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no. According to the new book I'm writing, when the wind blows, spring is certainly a time to prune all of those areas of yourself that will not take you along on the next cycle of your journey. And I think that goes full well with this idea of consumerism we've been talking about all month. And today I wanted to talk about one step to get away from some consumerism.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's the great way to close out the month of our discussion here in March, especially with it's spring. Let's talk about it.
Well, we were talking about that I have this belief that some of the reason that we have all of this product available when we it's not seasonal and stuff like that is because we've become such consumers of things we want when we want them, and because now that we can get them, we expect them. But if you really want a good lesson this summer, and if you live in the desert, this may not be so much for you, but if you want a real lesson in getting one step away from your own consumer behavior, I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of growing your own gardens.
Oh, yeah, that's a great topic. And I mean, of course, that's back to the idea of the victory garden, being able to support yourself and your neighborhood by raising certain things in your garden.
And, so for those of you probably in those snow-covered countries, you don't want to get out there and start turning up your dirt too early, because when you work your soil too early, you're going to have, saturated, and your soil's not going to have the right air consistency. Even in the desert, when my farmer friend Janelle used to come over, she would go through my garden and make me aerate that dirt. So one of the things that you want to be aware of is that, what kind of dirt are you going to be growing this little organic garden in? You're going to need some really good organic material. So you could start now, even if it's a little wet where you are, maybe starting your mulching of your composting pile.
Yeah, get some nitrogen in there so it can start getting some oxygen into the soil.
Right, and also maybe start composting your fruits and vegetables and your leftover materials that you don't use now. Last summer when I was in a house on Whidbey, that was one of the things, was that nothing went into the trash that was food related. I thought the deers were out there eating all my leftovers, but there was a compost pile out there, and that's where you're going to get good nutritional soil. Although we've got that dilemma now, you're putting in food that you've got that might have other materials in there, but basically, are you totally free from the experience of our environment, our universe? Probably not, but you could get back to yourself this summer and by starting a garden.
Yeah, do you have any suggestions on how they folks can get started with that?
Well, first of all, there's many, many books and many, many courses and blogs and things like that. But one of the things that I've learned most about gardening, because I'm not naturally, even though I was raised on my grandmother's fruit stand, no one ever taught me that you need to sit down and plot your garden. Now, that I think is probably the biggest thing. And how would you start to do that? Well, first of all, you would start with maybe a list of foods you like. And then you could start to take that list and compare it to foods that grow well in your situation, wherever you're living, your climate. And then maybe what you could start to then look at is see what is the planting schedule for these foods, and how much space do they require, and what do you need for a yield? I mean, really get in your research and get your garden organized by foods you like, how they grow, and when you plant them, because certainly by now you could be getting those seeds indoors, potted, those little seedlings, and get them going to plant outside when your soil does indeed dry out and is ready for planting.
Yeah, there's a lot of good books, or just not even books. There's places on the internet that people can go to, look up their seasons, what they should grow for where they live, what zone they're in. It's very, very simple to take a look at. And of course, if you also just go to the farmer's market or your nursery, you can look at seed packs and see. They'll tell you what zone you're in and what when you want to grow them.
But what I do want you to be cautious of is places like the bigger, and I'm not picking on Home Depot or Lowe's or anything like that, but what they do is they don't get you seed plots to match your growing seasons. So they just, ship them out here and there, and they're not necessarily best designed for your own particular growing thing. So really a well-organized garden starts with you knowing what grows well in your particular climate. But what does it mean to be an organic gardener? Do you know, Robert?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I do know what it means to be an organic gardener. I mean, it sounds like it's a lot of work. I know that. Or my organic gardens are always a lot of work. That's what it means to be an organic gardener.
Well, the definition of what we're talking about now is that organic gardeners don't use synthetic fertilizers or pesticides on their plants.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's all organic.
Right, it's all organic. So, and as from my shamanic perspective, the reason that I have a relationship with more organically grown food is that the organic gardener thinks of the plants as part of a whole. Everything from the soil, the water supply, the people, the wildlife, the intention, and even the insects that, part of your growing thing. So it becomes back to, it's more of a shamanic way of growing foods and vegetables. There's a man in New Mexico, who's in charge of the seed bank. And the seed bank is a project that a shaman I worked with. It's about, they grow and replenish organic seeds so that every year, now, you could think, oh, you're going to hoard some organic seeds in case the world ever blows up, but seeds have a life, and you need to work with these seeds just as you work with any other living organism, and know how long they can sit in the shed before that they are no more useful. So, it's, for me, it makes a lot of sense to move towards more of an organic local gardening system, only because it's about more nature. Yesterday, when I took a hike out in the desert, I go there so I can rebalance. So I suspect as you start to get into alignment with your own garden, that you're going to get into more alignment with yourself and understand, the growing process. And that certainly was true for me. The first year that I planted a garden out in the yard, and I had Oh my word, I was out there trying to weed every day. And I mean, it was so out of control. I didn't know a thing. I just went to Lowe's and put the plants in. And you know what? It was actually a waste of money and a waste of time because I did not get what I needed done to eat.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to take some time doing it. I was also going to suggest, Renee, for people who are living in communities that have communal gardens, it's a great way to learn more about gardening. You can have a small plot there in the community garden, or you can work as part of a co-op in a community garden and learn more about the neighborhood that you live in or the area that you live in, meet people who are also, farming and tilling and growing and get a little bit more education that way. It's a wonderful way to meet people with like-minded, also to, start getting your hands dirty.
And so one of the first things that I would suggest for people who are thinking about maybe starting an organic garden, it'd be a great project with your kids. I was once part of a project with Slow Foods where we built a garden in an elementary school, and each grade had their own plot.
Oh, fabulous.
It was a great thing, and what it did was it was one of the poorest neighborhoods in the desert, and it got all of these families growing their own gardens. I don't know how the garden's doing over the school now, but I know that there was more gardens around the school that year than ever. But one of the first primary things, if you aren't quite ready, get yourself a little composting pot and start to get some dirt ready for this project. And then my suggestion, really, depending on where you live, is maybe, and if you're older like me and Robert now, whose birthday was this month, you might want to build yourself, some beds, some raised beds. That way, your first attempt out, you're not competing with the weeds.
Yeah, that was the way I did it. I started, I've been gardening since I was a little boy, and I was growing things in Texas like strawberries and corn and, things that were easy to grow in Texas, string beans and just whatever I felt good about. Nasturtiums I was eating nasturtium salads when I was 8. And this is back in the early 60s, late 50s. But, the mindset is that you can start a very small garden and gain a lot of support from it. And if you do it above ground, getting you some, your above ground grounding, it gives you some real sense of accomplishment when you start seeing those tomatoes blooming and growing and whatever it is that you're growing, and then being able to serve that at the dinner table. What a fabulous thing.
I think that any move that you can make towards your own becoming more self-contained is a good one.
I agree with you. Thank you, my darling, once again for a great week and a great month of talking about consumer, our life as consumers. You have a great day, Renee. Thank you once again for joining us on the show.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me.
And joining me on this segment of the show is my good friend Joseph Anthony. You can learn more about Joe at www.planetswithin.com. Joe always has a great report on what's going on with the stars and the planets. What's going on this week, my friend?
Well, we're talking today on the full moon in Libra. And I'm sure many of you are feeling it. This energy, Robert, it's trying to find our balance or our equilibrium right now. That's what's going on.
Oh my, so it's all about indecision, having to find more clarity in one's life?
Exactly, because today's full moon is really being poorly aspected. In other words, there's a lot of oppositions in astrology today. There's a lot of squares. There's one positive note with Jupiter in Gemini, which has given us a lot of brain capacity, a lot of ideas. So we're filled with a lot of ideas right now. But, if people want to find out more, I do a monthly newsletter, Robert. I know you get it. And, I just give people an outline of what's going on over, throughout the month so they could understand a little bit better how these energies are shifting, and it's a free newsletter. So anyone, and it's always posted on my website. So anyone could just take a look at it.
Oh, I love your newsletter. I look forward to it every month because not only are you giving a report on the individual astrological signs, you're also giving a look at, the whole month and the planetary system and what's going on with the moon and everything else. It's really great.
Well, thank you. And, once you get into this field, as you know, you just want to help people and help them understand their lives and so on and so forth. So I do my part, and I know you do yours. But this week, we're really getting ready for another transformation. And we've been in this for a while now, let's face it, since 2012, December 21st, 2012. But this one is really asking us, this full moon today is really asking us about our partnerships, as I touched upon last week. Are we happy with the relationships we're in, the business relationships, the personal relationships? Is there a need to break free from these relationships? Are they restricting us? Are we learning enough? Are we gaining insight to who we are through the mirror image of these relationships? Some may say yes, some may say no. Now, this one is interesting. This full moon is interesting because next month we have a very powerful lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And that one is about endings. That one is about psychological endings. So you're really, folks, you really are going to question yourselves in regards to your personal relationships today and into the rest of this week. If your relationships are strong enough to withstand this change or this energy today, that's great. And you'll be able to withstand it for next month's lunar eclipse. If not, I will tell you that this full moon will really stir things up to lead up to the next lunar eclipse, which is in April the 25th. That one will end a relationship or finish up a relationship. So it's like a 1-2 punch from the universe with regards to relationships starting today. So we need to really pay attention and really ask the important questions. Have I gone far enough within this relationship, this partnership, this association, whatever it is to you? The big thing is try not to worry. That's the key, because with the moon in Libra and it's being pulled by Venus in Aries, which is the self, and then it's being opposed by Uranus, there may be conflict that occurs within your relationship, or misunderstandings or arguments, or just a tension that's like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. It's all energy. Remember, folks, whatever this universal source is, it's energy. It's an energetic field, and we're connected to it. And it's tugging and pulling at us to ask us what we really want. So ask the right questions and try not to take things personally. Well, he said this or she said that, or I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure about that. Just waiting for the energy to pass and then ask yourself the big questions. But this day has a lot of energy in it. And then we go into tomorrow and into Friday, where the moon shifts into Scorpio. There's even more intensity, or there's even more concerns or thoughts about our psychological well-being, because that's the sign of psychology, Scorpio. And now we start having a little better aspects. Friday, in the Catholic religion, is Good Friday, and I think we're going to have a Good Friday. I think it'll be better than today and tomorrow. And then into Friday, things should start loosening up a bit. I'm not saying a whole lot, but I'm going to say a bit, because the moon still conjuncts restrictive Saturn. So I want people to just understand that, we're waiting for this energy to pass. So I would not do anything impulsive or do anything out of the ordinary if you could avoid it. If you can't, then you got to go with the flow. But as we go into the weekend, Robert, we have the moon shifting into optimistic Sagittarius, which is always wonderful, because Sagittarians love to have fun and love to learn and are playful. And as we go into the weekend, the shifting begins to occur now more to the more optimistic side. So there's a lot of aspects on Sunday having to do with the moon. So we still have this lingering feeling of just the change, or whatever change has just occurred in your personal life in terms of a relationship or partnership. If you're not in one, of course, it's going to bring up a lot of feelings of not being in one. But on Sunday should feel a whole lot better astrologically, because there's so much going on, astrologically. Venus squaring Pluto, Venus sextiling, which is very positive to Jupiter. So conversation begins to flow again, I believe. So as we start the new month of April, we are slowly moving into it. Moon shifts into Capricorn on Monday and Tuesday. Of course, it's All Fool's Day, so I don't know if anyone even celebrates that anymore. But we're going into more of a realistic setting. When the moon is in Capricorn, we're being realistic about our jobs, our positions, our relationship, and we're starting to feel a different vibe because in numerology, April is a 4. 4 is about stability, or 4 is about foundation building. And I've always thought it was like 4 legs of a chair or 4 legs of a table, trying to find a little bit more stability. So we open up the month with that feeling of wanting some more stability. It's almost like a little bit of a tidal wave just hit us, and now we're trying to come back to center. So, Robert, I think it's going to be a very interesting April, as we continue looking for a little bit more fun and excitement and trying to find stability this week in what's just occurred in either personal relationships or some sort of news or information that just came out of mainstream. And we'll ease into April. That's what I see coming up. We're easing into April. So all I could say is it's quite another energy wave that's coming through.
Well, it sounds like that last part of the, going through the middle of that, of the week and through the end of it is that feeling of, because of indecisiveness, it's also creating an illusion of feeling stuck and also needing to sort of take a moment, take a beat, commit to what it is that you truly want, especially around relationships. I think it's always good to reflect on where we're at with any of our relationships, whether they're positive or they're toxic. So I think, what happens is that people forget to breathe, and inhale in the information. They get sort of, too stuck in it and not really sure whether they can make a decision. Go ahead and just feel free not to have to make a decision for those couple of days, right?
Absolutely, and that's exactly the way I see it as well. It's definitely, especially with Libra energy, trying to find balance, indecisiveness. I couldn't agree more. It's definitely not a time to make any major decisions if you could avoid it, but if you can't, you're going to have to just do it. Because like I said, the lunar eclipse on the 25th is really going to end something. So, it's just setting you up for something. That's all it's doing, this full moon.
Well, we're in an expansive time, that's for sure. This is an extraordinary year. We've both talked about how fast the energetic field seems to be expanding, and we're sort of in that. So it's important for people to really just breathe and release any fear or indecision about going into action with what they truly want, and just keep moving in the direction of their intention.
That's it. You said.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph, for joining us again. Everyone, you can learn more about Joseph at www.planetswithin.com. Thank you so much for joining us this week, Joe. Until next week, have a great week.
Thank you.
And on this segment of the show is Barbara St. John, a grief specialist and expert on counseling those who are looking to move past the pain, move through the pain, and understand the revelation of transformation through transition, death, sudden death experiences in their life, and post-traumatic stress syndrome. You can learn more about Barbara at barbarastjohn.com. Hi, Barbara. How are you today?
I am great, Robert. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us this week on the show. I looked at the title and I went, oh my God, exploring the F words about grief.
That's right.
What is the F words that we need to know about grief?
Well, let me tell you, the first one is forgiveness. The second one is fear. And so forgiveness, fear, and familiarity are some of the F words that are associated with grief. And forgiveness is one of the least understood concepts in the world, Robert. And it's sometimes it gives people problems. Most people seem to convert the word forgiveness into the word condone. And according to Webster's dictionary, forgiveness is to cease to feel resentment against sort of an offender. And condone is to pardon or overlook or volunteer, to treat trivial or harmless, not important. And, those two words are not synonymous. It's virtually impossible to forgive. The implications that, forgiveness means that I condone is not true. For a giver might harbor a tremendous amount of resentment against the person. A griever, I said giver. A griever might harbor a tremendous amount of resentment against the person who, murdered his or her child. And that resentment might create and consume a lot of energy, which in turn might mask the pain and sadness about the death of the child. I had a client who his son was shot at ASU, and for a laptop and a cell phone. And how does he begin to even process that? And as long as the griever stays focused on the murderer, they may find it impossible to grieve and to complete the relationship with the child who died. So I had to work with him on kind of going into that space, which was a very difficult thing for him. The resentment or the lack of forgiveness of the murderer gives more importance and energy to the murderer than to the child that he had lost. And so, a successful recovery from this pain caused by the loss requires that we focus our energy on completing our relationships with our loved ones who died. And the only way we can do that is by absolutely going in and not by forgiving the murderer who almost, is holding back the completion or the incompletion with the child. So we had to go through that little process with him, and it was very difficult. So the forgiveness does not mean that I condone it. It just means that I am allowing myself to move forward and actually grieve the loss of the individual in my life who I did lose, and maybe just as this gentleman, through the murder of his child. And grief, Robert, is normal and natural. It's an emotional response to loss, and it's essential to correctly identify the loss, the death of a child. He had to process this, and then his completion began. And, the example about the murder and the child, it can be applied to any victim of any kind of event. At some point, we have to forgive what has happened to us. So forgiveness is huge. The death of a loved one was a suicide. You might need to forgive them for taking their own life so that they could, so then you could then complete what was emotionally incomplete for you when they died. So forgiving them, forgiving yourself. And I often say that the forgiveness, when we forgive ourselves, what we are doing is we are saying, back when I made this decision, or I said this or that, or did this or that, I did not have all the information that I needed to make the correct or proper decision, or decision that would have supported me much better. So I have to forgive myself. And so, we forgive our children for certain things they do because we understand that they did not have all the information they needed to make the proper decisions. And, people come in too, Robert, and they talk about God. And I say, they say, God's never going to forgive me. And I said, that's not true. The universe of God is very hard to define. We don't, it's an energy, it's a frequency. And some believe that it's this universal force that moves us, which is true. And this universal force that moves us does not have time to run around and punish people. Sort of like, he doesn't say, oh, I'm going to get Joe in Detroit today because he did this 20 years ago, so, I'm going to get him. Or, I'm going to get this one in Scottsdale, Arizona, He understands, or the force understands, that we did not have all the information to make the proper decisions. So we need to forgive ourselves, and then we can move forward to forgive the others. And forgiveness is not objective. Forgiveness is one of the tools we may need to employ in order to complete the relationship that ended or that changed due to death, due to divorce, due to separation of some sort. And the subject of forgiveness, Robert, is massive. And it carries many, many beliefs based on generations, or, generation after generation, actually. And so, it's very, very important that we learn the definition of forgiveness, which is to cease to feel resentment against an offender. And remember that when you forgive, you are not condoning, which means to pardon or overlook or, volunteer or make it trivial. No. You're not doing that at all. And so what you are doing is you're allowing yourself to move forward. You're allowing yourself to process all this pain and actually move quicker into your life, into joy and peace and happiness. And the other thing is that you are also assisting your body in healing. When someone has lost someone, the tremendous amount of stress and strain on the body, the adrenals, your heart, you're not breathing properly, all these things are affecting you. So the more stress I have creates fear, by the way, and this fear freezes me. Oftentimes fear is false evidence appearing real. So if I have the fear that I can't move forward, that I can't forgive, the fear that now my health is deteriorating, the fear that, now my whole life has fallen apart, and these fears stop us from moving forward. And one way that you can dissolve the fear, again, is to look at the truth of what am I really afraid of. I'm afraid of facing my pain. I am afraid of letting go of this emotional pain. Many people, Robert, think if I let go of the emotional pain, I'm letting go of the person that I loved. And how can I do that? And if I move into joy, that person is dead and I'm in joy. Does it make sense? So what we need to do is to wrap our brain around the fact that those individuals that pass wouldn't want us to be in the situation of grief and destroy our physical bodies. And so, Robert, that's a little bit about the two F's, and forgiveness and fear. And, again, I just want to remind people that forgiveness and forgiving yourself is the most important thing. A lot of times people, when someone is murdered or suicide, they think, oh, my God, I should have said this, and I should have said this, and I didn't do that. And if I would have took them there, and if I would have been a minute sooner, and if I would have had been a day earlier or a day later, this wouldn't have happened. And so forgiving yourself because you know what? You didn't have all the information you needed to make the correct decisions. So that's a little bit about exploring the two F words, Robert, forgiveness and fear.
Well, they're both very, very powerful words, and like you said, the illusion is there to constantly remind us that there is something broken, there's something wrong with us, and it's just an illusion because there's nothing broken, there's nothing wrong with us. And this is a great exploration, Barbara. Thank you so much for taking a look at the F words, totally different than the ones I was expecting. But hello. Because you can put another F word with it, you know what I mean? It's like,
right. That's right.
Darling, thank you so much for joining us this week on the show. Again, everyone, Barbara St. John, www.barbarastjohn.com. Have a great week, Barbara.
You too.
On this last segment of the show, I'd like to talk a little bit about the power of your wealth and your numbers. Now, from many of you, I know that probably you either know a lot about numerology or maybe nothing at all. And where I come from in the field of numerology is, as an intuitive numerologist, I speak a great deal about the inner voice, the inner information that comes through when we really look at the vibrations or frequencies that we're giving and we're emitting out of our life. And we do have a life path. Most of the time we think a life path means that we're starting on a journey and then we're going to go somewhere and we're going to end up somewhere. But really, there's nowhere to go. There's just life. We're just breathing. And we're having experiences every day in our now. We're showing up either fully every day in our life or not so fully. And oftentimes where we don't show up fully is because there's parts of us that we believe are broken. There's parts of us that do not feel whole. And that really can really be represented very well by looking at how television and the media shows what beauty is, and what careers are successful, and how wealthy some people are and living these extraordinary lives. And we look back sometimes on our life and say, well, why don't I have that? What part of me is not fully realized that I can have that? Why aren't I good enough? Why aren't I successful enough? It's always the why, but it really shows back in the parts of us that we feel that are not whole or that are broken within us. Well, I'm here to say no part of us is broken. We are not broken. We are exactly whole, perfect, and complete, just the way we are, and everything that we show up for every day in our life, whether it's fully or not, we're putting our best foot forward to really, be who we are. And oftentimes it comes from a place of less consciousness or awareness than more consciousness and awareness. And we go up and down, back and forth. And these vibrations are really going between a denser field all the way to a lighter field. And for me, there is a harmonic signature in every number. Each number from 1 to 9, and the master numbers like 11 and 22, 33 and 44, actually express where we are in our daily life. It's amazing the accuracy of numerology, and especially the form in which I use. What I've done is I've taken all of it, the Chaldean, the Pythagorean, the Vedic, the Chinese. I've studied and looked at all of them for many, many years and created conclusions based on each one had tidbits of truth within them. Everything sort of gets built up over centuries or decades, and we keep adding and adding, and really it's getting down to the basic understanding of each part of them and really what they represent, and formulating new ideas for a new conversation. That's what we're about now, a new conversation. It's not the old conversation about lessons in school and feeling that we're passing or failing life. That's the old paradigm. I invite you into a new conversation that speaks of we're on a great adventure. Life is an adventure, and every aspect of it shines through when we allow it and we receive it. It still shines through if we're not fully allowing it anyway. That's what divine love is all about. It doesn't, it doesn't filter itself just because we don't like it or we do like it. We're able to move forward through love, whether we're resisting it or not. But everything about this adventure has gifts, and we open those presents or packages in our life, and we either see them as great opportunity or we see them as bombs exploding and making us feel like we go into shock, or it becomes traumatic or something difficult to deal with. Even those bombs really are gifts, because they're there to sort of maybe perhaps shift us from a direction that we're walking in that isn't really the one that is in our best and highest good. I mean, we're making choices, but sometimes we're not making the best choices for ourselves. It's not coming from our gut, our intuition, that says, yes, go ahead. There's the urge, there's desire that can come from choices made by the perception that if I do this, I'll make more money. If I do that, I'll find happiness and security in that marriage, when really I'm not really fully wanting to move into that relationship, but I feel like it's the best I can do. So choices can be very dense or they can be very light. And it has everything to do with how it shows up in our birth path and our life path. And what all those gifts are expressing to us is an opportunity to move into our fullest expression as divine love, to really discover within ourselves the joy and happiness that really is within us. I mean, it's what we're doing it for, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day, when we dig deeper into the experience of life, it really calls to us and urges to us to express more joy and happiness and feel the freedom of life. Oftentimes, those are the things that we're not feeling every day. And so why aren't we feeling those things? Well, it has a lot to do with the kind of signature that we've come onto the planet with, what our IP address is, and how we're expressing our blueprint out in our life path. Now, when I speak of a life path, I don't mean that part where we're starting somewhere and we're on a journey ending up in somewhere. Like I said, we're not arriving anywhere. We're already here. We're already fully present in divine love. We just don't sometimes remember that. So what the life path really is the adventure with a lot of gifts that are altering and shifting our experiences so that we can have this experiential thing that urges us to creating more, being more, expressing ourselves until we're fully expressed. Just like a flower. It starts out as a seed, but within that seed is everything that it requires and needs to be a fully formed flower. It doesn't ask, will I grow up and be a flower? What kind of flower will I be? It knows within itself that whatever it is fully already. And we have sometimes lost that place in ourselves, lost that memory that we also have that within us, and that every day we have an arrival point within ourselves with our destination with love. We are literally, there is a point where we will fully realize who we are, and when we have that moment, everything before that will almost have probably seemed like a dream. It will be like a memory of somebody else. And in this awakening process, right, many people are feeling that now, that who they are or who they're becoming isn't who they were so much anymore. It's not that drama and that field of problems and all that, torment and adversity and pain or whatever it may have been. It seems like a dream. It seems like it was somebody else. Because as you are becoming more fully aware of who you are, you're wanting more of that. You're looking and wanting to find that joy within yourself. Very interesting. Numerology allows us to really take a look at our blueprint. And the way that I look at it, it really opens up the opportunity to see where you feel broken and where you don't feel so whole in your life, and shifting that so that you know that you are whole. So it's a really extraordinary opportunity to take a deeper look. Come take a look and take a deeper journey with me in this field of information, and see, where you show up in yourself feeling not completely fulfilled or fully aware or a whole, and have the remarkable understanding that actually you are. And in these places of the parts that you're resisting or you're doubting about yourself, you can shift that almost immediately. It's all about the awareness. So I just always want to give you a little feedback on numerology, because the thing is that, I feel like it's a field that a lot of people have been starting to become more aware of. I mean, we've been sort of aware a long time about astrology. It's been sort of in the forefront. And, it's time for us to take a look at another point of view. So with that, we're going to take a point of view of this week and see what's going on for us energetically in the field of our, harmonic vibration on the planet. I often speak that this is a 6-year. It's 2013, 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 3. The 0 actually is a symbol. It's a cipher. It's not a number. It really represents everything and nothing. It shows up as the all-encompassing beingness or unmanifest beingness of the universe. I say it's the place that holds and doesn't hold divine love. It's the source of all creativity. It's the source of our thoughts. Our thoughts come up into our mind as ideas, and then we apply them into the construct of our mind to invent formulas or opportunities in our life that we can actually manifest. It's an amazing process. And this week is our opportunity to step into that power and that wisdom of who we are. I invite you into this new conversation. What is your wisdom? What have you grown in the experiences of your life? And it's time to examine that so that you can become more fully aware of how you're moving along on your adventure every day in your presence and your now. So take a look at your wisdom. What is it that you've grown in your experiences? And begin to sort of, embrace those in your own sense of self-love. It is a self-love year. We want more love within ourselves. We want to recognize that love. It's within you and it's in with me every day. Just take a look inside. Look in the mirror and say, I see you, the divine light within me. Okay, I would like to thank our guests today, our segment hosts, Renee Baribeau, Bobby Marchesso, Joseph Anthony, and Barbara St. John for once again joining us here on Co-Creator Network and the Dr. Robert Show. Everyone, have a great week. We'll see you next time.